So a little bit of background about myself. So before I came here, I really had lost the will to live, and this was an outcome of contemplation work which I'd done for over 10 years. So I dabbled into every possible, spiritual avenues and different kinds of spiritual avenues for growth, exploration, challenging myself, and I would read every perspective on the internet. I would try all kinds of things like holotropic breathing, flotation tank, different styles of meditation, different teachings from all possible religions, like Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, Advaita, non-duality, and also all these free thinkers who post different YouTube videos. Like I watch hundreds of them. Also philosophers like Alan Watts, Terence McKenna. So there are hundreds of such people, and 10,000s of such videos, and all this in the course of 10 years. And what it resulted in is I totally lost direction in life, and I was kind of in a roadblock there, and I didn't know how to move forward. So I was in utter despair, and that's when I always wanted to do ayahuasca. I had read about it like many years ago, and then I finally got the opportunity to do it, and that's what brought me to the center here. I was pretty sure that I'm going to make full use of this opportunity and possibly undergo a total transformation of consciousness. So I was entirely ready for it. Then on the first day of the retreat, I never. I had a lot of imagination about what the experience would be like, but on the first day, after drinking it, it was completely not what I expected it to be. It entirely was different from my expectation. So it started off with showing me beautiful worlds, and I felt a little bit sleepy, and I just leaned back, and then all kinds of beautiful worlds started emerging. They were more like feeling worlds. I wasn't seeing any visualizations or anything, just feeling worlds. And then later, I felt some kind of spiritual ecstasy. I wanted to scream, I wanted to shout, I wanted to enjoy myself. There were really great people in the center here who helped me go through a lot. Who supported me. They would hear everything I'm saying, share my joy, share my suffering. So it was extremely reassuring and powerful to hold somebody's hand and go through that experience. It would have been much harder if it were not for the support of the Nimea Kaya staff. So then I also faced. So it was a combination. The first experience was a combination of heaven and hell. It was. I had extraordinary delight, and I saw the absurdity of all of this existence. So I was laughing and screaming in joy, like what's really going on in this world? Everything is absurd. Why do people believe in all these things like that? And then later, the night took a turn, and then I lived through my worst nightmare. I was constantly trying to kill myself, and then I was flailing my hands. I was banging. I was trying to chew off my t-shirt. I was trying to eat my own hand. I was drowning in water, and I actually felt the sensation of drowning. Like it was extremely painful, and I would go through it again and again in a loop, a never-ending loop. I realized at that moment that hell realm does exist. It's all in consciousness. And hell realm is basically a realm of infinite suffering which cannot end. It's interminable, unavoidable, intense suffering. It's called hell. So that's what I realized about hell, and then I lived through it. And somehow, great thanks to Lee who stayed with me, and then who prevented me from injuring myself, and somehow helped me get through the night. And then the next day morning, everything was back to normal. Then I just realized I just had a trailer of heaven and hell in the same night. The second night, this was another unexpected thing. So I thought if this was my first experience, the second one would be something similar to this. But the second experience was entirely different from the first experience. There was no commonality of any sort, which was very confusing. And second one, I was just this kind of weird lizard mutant who was really suffering. All I wanted to do was vomit, and I just had that bowl in front of me, and that I would hold on to it for my dear life. And then it was a terror. I was shifted into some strange mutant reality, which was nothing like what I've ever experienced in this entire life. I was assuming that it would bring up something like childhood dramas or something, but apparently I might have already solved those issues in my own work. So this ayahuasca, I heard, gives you directly what you need. So maybe what I needed to experience is this weird otherworldly realm. And then so I just went through that experience, and then I was not able to vomit at all. So I would just keep holding the bowl and endlessly suffering for a long period of time. And then again, even that experience passed, and then once again it would become good after that. And then later I had a lot of insights about reality, and then all kinds of flashing images and things like that. On the third night, I had a very interesting experience. It's like I had the experience of being a creature, a creature with needs, desires, fears, all these kind of things. So it kind of showed me my own body and my own cravings, my own wants. So I was just on the ground and squirming with all these passions moving my body. So that was quite interesting to experience. I mean, because I never experienced the visceral nature of this body. I mean, I used to always live in my head in a thought space, almost dissociated from my body, and the body would just unconsciously do its things while I'm enjoying myself in the thought space. But now I think it was time for like a major integration. So ayahuasca gave me exactly what I need. It gave me the most root chakra like experience to absolutely ground me in this body. Because I had already in my entire life I've enjoyed the mental realms a lot more. So ayahuasca probably realized I don't need more of that. I don't need more of fantasies and stuff. What I really need is a really primal experience. So I think it gave me this really primal experience that's profoundly changed me. And then it is I would say most of the work was done in the lower three chakras and the heart. Maybe that's the part of me that really needed healing, and that's what got healed right now. So then the fourth ceremony, then I also had this. So the commonality among all these ceremonies, especially at the start, is the sheer terror of it. I think as many mystics have said, the route to higher consciousness is through terror and fear. There's no other way to get to the higher consciousness, because the idea is you are made to face death. And what is death basically? There's no such event as death. There's no experience as death. What is death is basically 100% change. So to experience death is to experience 100% change. And if you witness yourself changing 100% in consciousness, then you have essentially entirely enlightened. So that's what I tried to do. I mean, it was to witness that level of suffering was extremely difficult, but I tried to stay with it. I tried to witness it entirely, so that I try to embrace it as part of one of my experiences. So without dissociating, without distorting, without avoiding any of that kind of stuff. The other thing is ayahuasca at times takes over your ego. So in the sense, you are quite helpless. Like if you're suffering, so many people they would repress their suffering. Like you can suffer and you can smile, have a smiling face in society. You can't do that on ayahuasca at times. At times it will usurp even your ego, and all you do is you're a helpless creature suffering, and then you realize it gives you a trailer of the fragility of human existence. Like we are very fragile and we need others for our survival, and with our egos we tend to tough it out and stuff, but once it takes over even the ego, then you're just left with nothing to do but surrender and be helpless. And I had a lot of lessons about acceptance of need, acceptance that we need others, acceptance of the comfort others can bring to us, also acceptance of our essential nature is light, but however the appearance it takes on is of you being in this body as a creature. So unless you completely accept this creature and the body, you're not living to your fullest potential. So I realized that, and I also realized that unless you love yourself, it's impossible to believe that someone else can love you. So that was a very profound insight. So because even if somebody tells you I love you, you won't believe them because you don't think you're worthy. So I had all these kind of understandings. I also understood that the heart and the mind. Earlier, my mind would drive the heart. So the heart was constantly dissatisfied, but my mind would have different models in place. Oh, you should do breath meditation. You should be doing this thing. You should be concentrating on non-dual reality and ignore everything else. So it would tell me all these spiritual, it would give me all these spiritual goals, and I would do this at the cost of my feelings. I would be feeling depressed and terrible, and still I would just be dogged about my pursuit, that I'm going to make it. So now I realized the silliness of the whole thing. I mean, I'm ignoring them. In fact, the feelings probably are the mystery, and the mind wants to know this mystery. So when the mind dominates, you're trying to conceptualize this mystery, and ayahuasca makes that very difficult to do because, like I said, it gives you exactly what you need. So in my case, my problem was my mind being extremely dominant over the heart. And then ayahuasca just showed me that the heart is the ultimate driver and the mind should be subordinate to the heart. And that is part of the reason for all my suffering. So that was a major breakthrough. And I feel like in the final session, again, I had a lot of, initially I suffered a lot, but this time it was a little more mellow. I just held somebody's hand and went through everything. And then later I started feeling joy. And now I feel like I'm completely healed. I feel like I'm reborn. I feel like I've lost the fear of death. I've understood my orientation in life and that I need to move with the heart. And my purpose would just be to follow my heart. So that's cleared a lot of confusion I had. I also met the other interesting thing is every person in this ceremony are all at similar levels of consciousness. So I finally had a brotherhood like experience like never before in my life. Like I've always felt alienated, and so the first time somebody released, this environment has released my alienation, and I've realized like how much we need others and how nice it can be to have other people at the same level of transformation and consciousness. So I'm very grateful for having this. I would say it's a God's grace that I did my best, and then the God has done the rest. He's brought me here, made me experience this higher consciousness, and I utilized it to the fullest to completely expand myself. And now I feel my third eye is awake, and I feel awake like never before. It's going to be a very different life, and I'm going to be a very different person now when I get back home. My attitude has got an enormous change, and then all the baggage I was carrying in my ego has just vanished. I also realized the being with what is, the isness, in my opinion, is the highest state of consciousness. It is just to be entirely what's there. That's the best way I can describe it. It goes beyond words. But yep. I'm very grateful to be here, and then I'm reborn now. This is a process of rebirth. It takes a lot of courage out of you, and if any of you ever feel you have the courage to go through this, I would extremely recommend it, and it will transform you like you can't even imagine. It's beyond our imagination. That's all I want to say. Thank you.